Thank you for tuning in to another episode of my Veterans to Success podcast. You probably know by now, my mission is to help 1 million veterans and entrepreneur business owners achieve the dreams, goals, and aspirations they deserve. That is why I created the Veterans to Success podcast, because I get to interview guys, men and women, who want to share their fascinating stories with you about their time before, during and after their time in the military, so you can benefit and overcome your challenges. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be mesmerized, astounded, and entertained. And today I've got with me no other than Mick Hawkes QCB. Hello, Mick. How are you doing today?
Yeah, all good, Joe. Thanks for the invite, the invite, and looking forward to chatting.
Yeah, and yeah, me too. And as you know, we've already had a chat about this. In fact, we've had a really good chat, and we just do no big formal introduction other than what I've just said, and it's just delve straight in, and then we do a reveal as we go along. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, mate. So let's just dive straight in and tell me what was going on in your life before the military then, from a young lad.
Yeah, it's funny because my father was in the army, Royal Signals for his sins. So I travelled around, travelled all around the world, not all around the world, but we were in Germany for quite a long time. And I was massively into football. So every school I went to, bearing in mind, being a pads brat, we went to quite a few different schools because every 2 years we were on the move.
Yeah.
So I really got into football, and soccer was a way of integrating into the different schools, because you imagine as a young school kid and you arrive and everyone else has already made their friends, it's quite difficult to gel in.
Yeah.
And there was me and my brother. I was okay because I was really good at football, so really got into the football crowd straight away. Whereas my brother wasn't. He was more of a ladies' man.
Okay.
Not really into sports and stuff like that. So he found it a bit harder. But growing up in an environment that we sort of lived in Germany didn't really inspire me, and this is no disrespect whatsoever to the Royal Artillery units that we tended to travel around with, but it didn't really inspire me to join the military. And the reason being is one of the organisations, as I was getting older, 12, 13, 14, was a unit that had been based in, it was 40 Field Regiment, Royal Artillery, based out of Gütersloh, but they'd been there for 20 odd years. So really got into that culture of drinking in Germany.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I was seeing these people wandering around in the evening quite drunk, especially in the living quarters, in married quarters area.
Yeah.
So there was no inspiration there. My father didn't inspire me to join the military either. I don't know what it was, but there was certainly no inclination whatsoever to join the military.
Yeah. Well, go on. Yeah.
Yeah. So my last year at school, my mother and father, they divorced, and we ended up back in the UK, in Lincolnshire, and which was quite difficult because living in Germany for 6 years before that, the school syllabus was totally different. So struggled really academically. And when it push came to shove at the age of 15, and you have to decide which way you want to go, I thought I'll be a professional footballer, as you do.
Yeah.
And went for a trial with Lincoln City, and I never got picked. So my world just shattered.
Yeah.
All I ever want to do is be a footballer. When someone takes that away from you, it's actually quite a bit of a culture shock. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I just want to explore a little bit about being a pads brat. So the child of someone who has a pad in the army, living quarters. Moving every 2 years, right? What effect did that have on you? Was it positive? Did it make you feel limited in what you could do? And then everything was building up towards this trial for Lincoln Football Club, and you just didn't make it. So how did that manifest itself? And also your mum and dad going through a divorce.
Yeah, well, I take the pros and cons out of most things, I suppose.
Yeah.
You know, it was good. It was good moving around because you're in different areas. Very hard to make friends. You know, really good friends. Because you are moving.
Yeah.
You know, so I went to 10 different schools. In Germany alone, I was in Gütersloh initially in primary school, and then I went to senior school in Gütersloh, King's School.
Yeah.
We then moved away, and I ended up went to a boarding school in Wilhelmshaven up in north of Germany for a year, which was grim because it's an old German naval base, very cold up there. So we spent a year which actually transpired, helped me when I first joined the military because I'd been away.
Yeah.
And then we came back to Prince Rupert School, Wilhelmshaven. They built a brand new school at Rintel, so moved down there. So in Germany alone, 4 different schools, which was quite a lot of moving about, if that makes it, in that 6 years.
Yeah, in such a short period of time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was funny because playing football for every school I went to, you ended up one minute you were playing for King's School, and next minute you're playing opposite them because we used to do, in Germany there was only a certain amount of British schools really, and so we ended up playing each other every year. And one minute you're playing for them, and next minute you're against them. So that was quite interesting. Yeah, and the divorce came out the blue, I suppose, because I was always walking around with a football under my arm outside, never indoors. It's not like today's kids where they're indoors playing on computers. Back in the day, it was a football under your arm, and out you went. As soon as you got off the school bus, you went, got changed, and then got your football and went for a kickabout with, some of the lads and stuff like that. So you didn't really see what was going on with your parents' marriage. So that came out the blue.
Yeah.
They split, and then and it just so happened it was such a bad timing that I had 1 year left at school, and we moved back to the UK, and it was to Lincolnshire, which is where my mother came from. So we moved back there, and my final year was in a place called Alford in Lincolnshire, so not that far from Skegness. That area there, very much Royal Air Force, Lincolnshire. As
That's right. Yeah.
Every time I got on the train anywhere, it was it was seeing the blue of the Royal Air Force everywhere, and that didn't really inspire me one iota, if that makes sense.
Right. So at this time, then really, the military wasn't on your tick list, was it? It wasn't on your checklist.
Not at all. No, it was football or nothing, and then when you get that knocked away, so the grim reality really was, speaking to my peers who were leaving school at the time, most of them were going to go to college. Majority were going to get into either farming, be a mechanic, or be a builder, which is what my brother ended up doing. And being in Lincolnshire, and that had no interest for me whatsoever. So quite ironically, I then realised that the military was the obvious choice really. So I jumped on the train, and it's funny because as you do in them days, you're sent away for all the advertisements about the Royal Air Force, the Royal Marines, the Navy.
Yeah.
These type of things, and got them all and reading through. And my mother actually wanted me to be join the Royal Navy because the uniform looked really nice. Thankfully I didn't listen to her at all. And quite ironically, I went into the Grimsby recruiting office for the army, and there was a big burly paratrooper sat behind a desk, and behind him, much like here, he had a big picture of paratroopers jumping out of an aeroplane, And I just looked at that and thought, yeah, that's for me. Not realizing, what you needed to do to actually get to that point. But at 15 and a half, young kid, walking in off the street, and this sergeant said, yeah, sign on the dotted line here. And we just took it from there.
Thank you. And it's always interesting, isn't it? When they depict on films people joining the army and the hankies waving and everything, and everyone's happy with a bit of trepidation. I mean, you're absolutely crapping yourself, aren't you, really? Because you don't know, you've got no clue what's going on. I mean, I went down to Liverpool, signed on, I couldn't do it when I was 16. My dad wouldn't sign me up for the junior leaders. So I went to Liverpool at 18. I'm thinking, what's happening? And just the same as you, when I went in, who was it? I forget which regiment, but it might have been the engineers, actually, because you tend to join whoever the person that's sitting behind the desk, don't you?
Well, it's funny because when we went through that process, so this big burly parachute was obviously chopped to bits because, I've obviously put my name down to join them. But they then send you down to Birmingham.
Oh, was that Sutton Coldfield?
Yeah, Sutton Coldfield.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously after you've done your test and that lot, you've got all these other units that trying to persuade you to go, one way or the other. But my mind was set up. I was quite decisive as a kid, always were. And once I'd made a decision, that was it. I was off to join the Junior Parachute Regiment of September 1975, and away I went. It was. But it was daunting, you imagine a young kid. But I always look back on the time that I spent in at Wilhelmshaven at boarding school, because when I first went to Aldershot, there was obviously a lot of young kids there, same age as me, and some had never been away from home before, and you could hear them crying in their rooms, just that bit of homesickness that people get. Whereas I didn't get that because I obviously had that when I went to boarding school. So that was a bit of a shock. And quite ironically, I found, now bearing in mind when I was growing up, all I ever did was play football.
Yeah. And
I never ever once finished a cross country run, ever, because I wasn't interested. It was, why am I forced to do that when I could be playing football? So I used to just skivvy off and go and play football rather than, for me, cross country was a waste of time, playing football time. But as it happened, when I first joined the junior paras, the first thing they had was a big cross country run. And there must have been about 300 in our intake.
I was going to say how many was on the intake. 300, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and I came second, and I just thought, well, the hell did that
good lad. Hey, that's great.
Yeah, and as it happened, I ended up joining the junior parachute regiment cross country.
Well, of course, you would, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And funny story, but we when you join a cross country team in the juniors in them days. You went off to, the Army Catering Corps had a cross country team, and the Guards battalions had their cross country team. So you went to all these. It was a league thing. So you went round and competed. And as it happened, we came second. And so the Junior Parachute Regiment came second to the Army Catering Corps, and that didn't go down. So we got. Well, we got little trophies, and then on the way back to Browning Barracks, the RSM was waiting for the bus to turn up. Obviously, got news that we came second, and he had a big black bin stood. And as we got off, we were told to put our trophies in the bin because coming second to the catering corps was nothing to shout about.
I can imagine that would have taken years to live down that. And a parachute regiment coming second to what we're jokingly called the slop jockeys, the catering corps. That'll be. And respect to you if you are ex catering corps. We just rip the mick out of each other anyway. Wow. Yeah, no wonder. That's an interesting thing. So then what happened then after that then?
Yeah, so when I got to juniors, they were asking for volunteers to join the gymnastic platoon. That were It was a display organisation that went around the country doing different displays. And as it happened, the year that I was in, really, we did the FA Cup final of 1976, Man United versus Southampton.
All right.
So we did that. So in the middle of the pitch, but just before that, a couple of months before, we actually did one at Ipswich Town, um, uh, and they were playing Man United again. And I think Man United thought we were a bit of a jinx because they lost 1-0 to Ipswich, and they lost 1-0 to Southampton, who, as it happened, were in the second division. But quite ironically, that 76 FA Cup final was the last time the Queen actually handed over the trophy to a guy called Peter Rodriguez, who I remember well because he used to play for my favourite football team at the time, Leicester City.
Right.
And
Okay.
yeah, and yeah, so it was quite a, looking back on it now, I was there when she handed over the trophy for the very last time, because thereafter, different members of the royal family used to hand it over.
All right.
Uh, but it was just great, Joe, to be honest. Going around the country doing all these different displays was fantastic. And there was one down in Exeter that we did. And just before we actually did a proper display, we were doing a bit of practice. And I was practicing doing double somersaults. So running, hitting a trampette, doing a
Yeah.
double somersault, landing on quite a thick mat. And I goofed it up, got it wrong, and as I landed on my heels, my knee and my nose connected pretty sharpishly, so smashed my nose. It was quite flat, I suppose, and there was blood everywhere. Anyway, there was no time to faff about. We were straight into the demonstration, and one of the demonstrations is where you have three trumpets all facing each other, and
Yeah.
you just give each
Yeah.
other, if that makes sense. And then the very last one is where three people all go at the same time, and I had the middle. I was going through the middle, so you have one low middle, and then the top guy did the
Yeah.
somersault
Yeah.
over. And because I must have still have been in shock because I just took the other two out completely. And then they sussed out that yeah, I was probably not fit to do the other demonstration, if that makes sense. But just for me, it just remember, 1976, you just got yourself up,
Yeah.
shut yourself up, and away you went, just
And
carried on.
and the show must go on. I mean, yeah, because I was a gym queen, PTI, and we used to do all sorts of weird and wonderful things, spec over the salt courses and stuff. And like health and safety was just out the window. Some of the stuff, and pretty much what you did, which we'll come on to shortly, like health and safety. What's that then? So they've realised you can cost.
Yeah, well, I mean, I loved it, but then as soon as you finish that season, you then sort of, because you were older now, you're 17 years of age. You then went into recruit training, but because you were a junior, you generally joined about week 5, week 6 of the recruit thing, and I joined 432 platoon. Of the parachute regiment, and quite ironically, some of the guys that I ended up with in the SES were actually in the same platoon. But I loved it. I was a really good runner, enjoyed it, enjoyed the mentality. But about 16 weeks into the training, I snapped my ankle really badly. And it all came about. We went for a run, and it was before we went to a place they called it Advanced Wales, where you went down to Brecon to do all the tactical stuff again, if that makes sense. And it was just before we went down there, but we went for a run on Hankley Common, just outside Aldershot, where a lot of tank burns and stuff like that. And and the instructors, we got to quite a high tank burn, and they decided that we all had to go up and do a practice para roll, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I jumped up, and all I could hear was a snap, so could everyone else, and I was in absolute agony. And we had no medical vehicle with us at all. There was no, because we just went out for a run, just to keep us ticking over before we went down to Wales. And so the ankle had snapped. So I was carried back on lads' shoulders because we didn't even have a stretcher.
No stretcher.
Yeah, and went all the way back to Browning Barracks in Aldershot to the med centre. They then took us up to the Royal Cambridge Hospital, which was in Aldershot, the hospital there. My ankle had to be manipulated back into place because it'd been, obviously snapped. And then 3 weeks later, I was on the road to recovery, thinking that I'd be straight back into training again. And they re-x-rayed it, and the doctor came around and said, "Listen, it hasn't fitted how we wanted it to fit. So we're gonna have to pin your ankle and put a pin in it." So that then put another couple of months onto the rehabilitation side of it. And then thereafter, I struggled really. Out running, it just didn't feel comfortable, and I got dragged into the doctor's office, military doctors, and they said, "Listen, unfortunately, you're unlikely to be able to parachute again. So here's your options." And they said you can transfer here, do this, do that, blah blah blah, but out of the parachute regiment. Now, for those who are not aware, the parachute regiment is the mindset is slightly different to the other Green Army units, and I'd been totally indoctrinated. It was parachute regiment or nothing. And I the thought of going to a normal military unit, like the light or green jackets or whatever, didn't appeal at all.
And the catering corps wouldn't let you in because you're not fast enough now. You can't go.
Yeah, absolutely. Reject. Well, here's another power reject. So I actually left the military for about 5 months. After the first month of leaving, I thought about joining the police force and blah blah blah, and just quickly realised what a mistake it was to actually leave the army. So went straight back up to Grimsby to try and rejoin.
Now this is interesting. Thanks for sharing that. You see, I was at a school giving a talk on planning for your future only on Thursday, and I was saying to them, I said, look, because the presentation was called Dreams versus Reality. Now, because in my capacity as a financial advisor, now depending on who does the presentation, because I read the message and I thought, right, this could be dreams, or forget them, just look at be realistic. And then I said to the kids, I said, no, listen, decide on your dreams and make them your reality, right? If that makes sense. And the thing is, like with you, first of all, you got a knock back with Lincoln City, the football club. Now you've just been told by doctors that you're never going to go again, because it was the same for me. After I had my first injury at 14, you might not walk again. And then I joined the army and became a PTI. And then the other one, which you know about, was where they said you might not walk again. So you've got this thing now where you've been told you're not going to be able to run or parachute, so you may as well get out, and you left. So how low are you feeling now?
Yeah, I was at my lowest age ever. I got back to Lincolnshire just thinking, what the hell am I doing now? I quickly realised that the mistake was leaving the military. I should have just sucked it up and forgot that, taken that cassette out the back of my head that was put in there about the paras, and then gone on and done something else. So when I went back to back to the recruiting office. They obviously the big burly parachute had moved on by then, and another person was there, and he said, "Listen, you've got a great report from the juniors, from the parachute regiment, great report. So, have you thought about?" But there was a big red sort of line, no parachuting, on my thing, and as it happened, my pin should have come out after 18 months, but because I'd left the army. I'd totally forgotten about it, if that makes sense, and it stayed in for a while. So they said, listen, you can't parachute. However, you're a fit lad. You've done this. Have you thought about being a commando?
Do you like coffee? A lot of people tend to spend money on expensive coffees from outlets without even thinking about it. Well, for the price of just 2 coffees per month, you can gain access to valuable business and life resources gained from my over 37 years in business and 15 years in the military. These world-class resources are designed to help you achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations you deserve. So visit joeteams.com now to find out more. That's JOETEAMS.com to find out more.
And I went, tell me more. They went, well, the army has got their own commando units. You've got the Royal Engineers or the Royal Artillery.
Yeah.
What do you think? And I went, Royal Artillery. That's
Oh, what a mistake! What a mistake, mate! You should have come to the Engineers 5'9" squadron. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I Royal Artillery. So I then had to go down and do training down, and it was at Woolwich, as it happens. Yeah. So I went down to Woolwich, and it was a bit farcical because having done nigh on 2 years as a junior and also getting to week 16 of the parachute regiment. So doing the Royal Artillery training was a bit of a doddle, I suppose. But it was great. I really, really enjoyed it. I liked the ethos of it, Aldershot and everything else. But I felt a bit of a cheat because I got best recruit, best shot, and best gym. So they give out 4 awards at the end of it, and the only one I never won was the best improved, because obviously someone else got it. But I got all the others, and I felt a bit of a fraud actually being given it. But they made the decision, and away we went with it.
Just on that, how come you felt a bit of a fraud?
Because all the other people I was competing with had not touched a weapon, not done anything, and I had that massive advantage. Although I didn't play on it at all. Not once did I say we did this in the paras. I just kept my mouth shut and away I went. But my number was different to everyone else's.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But I did, and it was only afterwards, after the training, that I said, "Listen, guys, bit of a cheat here, because I'd done 60 weeks of the parachute regiment, going through their recruit process, so slight advantage. So all the awards that I got, I never kept any of them. I think we got a pace stick and all that sort of stuff, and I gave it to my mum, and away we went, but my mother never came down to, there was no one there to watch me pass out, so that felt a bit strange. And
what happened there then, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I think because my mum she was on her own, she'd gone through that divorce, and because I'd come out the paras, I think, you should have been there. Now you're down there, so it just didn't fit her coming down to Woolwich to watch the passing out parade. So there's me picking up 3 awards and no one there to see it, if that makes sense. So, but but ironically, so I joined the Royal Artillery to join 29 Commando, and as it happened, the next commando course, there was only room for one person to go and join from our recruit thing, and it was a guy whose brother was in 29. So even though he wasn't very fit, he got the place, because he was picked by his brother. So they said, listen, you're going to have to join another artillery unit and then go from there. So I ended up in the same place that I was as a school kid. I joined 40 Field Regiment, Royal Artillery. over in Gütersloh, Germany.
Oh, so that was a bit of a deep joy moment for you, then,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
absolutely. Bit of a circle, but I got there. So the problem that I had initially as a school kid was seeing this unit, you know, the drunkard. So I ended up going to the alcoholic battery of the alcoholic regiment in the Royal Artillery, if that makes sense. So a bit of a culture shock, to say the least. And I'll tell you how bad it was. So we did an inter battery athletics day. And because I'm, I was a good runner, so I did the 5,000 meters, won that, won the event. So we got maximum points because the 5,000 meters was the first event, really. So we were on maximum points. They were the only points that we, they were the only points that we got throughout the whole competition, because people fairly tipsy, trying to climb over hurdles and stuff like that. And I just, what have I let myself in for here? So instantly I put my papers in to go to 2.9 as quickly as I can, and there was a bit of knockback. They obviously wanted to keep young individuals within the battery, and I understand that. But my vision wasn't with 40 Regiment. It was joining 2.9. So they at the time I was in the cross country team. I was in the tug of war team. Played football, so did as much sport as I possibly could. Just to keep myself ticking over. And I think we were doing in the athletics team, and I think we were doing some. And the battery were away on exercise, and I put my chit in, and managed to get out of there pretty sharpish, and ended up down in Plymouth, doing the All Arms Commando course.
Well, just as well, really, because Germany was an incubator for alcoholism. I mean, I remember back when I was in Germany, in Osnabrück, people are going in Alfie and buy a bottle of Asbach, like for a couple of quid, and then go back to the room and drink it. Or there was we had 16 suicide squadron, because there was an outdoor swimming pool down on the ground, but actually from the block, it was, I don't know, it was about 30 meters, maybe a bit more. Yeah. But in the squadron bar, they opened the doors and said, who's going to run and dive in the pool? This is 3 stories up. And there were quite a few who didn't make it. So yeah, there was, yeah. And that's the amazing effect of alcohol, isn't it?
It is. It's funny you should say that. So the 8 months I spent, or 9 months I spent in 40 Regiment, there was 3 suicides. There was a guy who ran up onto the motorway, because near Gütersloh there was a main motorway, not that far away, Autobahn. A guy ran up there and jumped in front of a articulated lorry, flattened himself. Oh. There was another one who hung himself. And the bizarre one was, we used to do a thing called sight guard.
I remember sight guard. Yeah, I remember that.
And I, because I had quite a high betting, because of my father's background, my DV was quite high. So I was one of the ones that used to show visitors in. So rather than being in the towers, I used to do, which is not a bad job for a week. Rather than be. But we heard a gunshot about 2 o'clock in the morning, and as they do, they try to contact all the towers, and one of the towers wasn't responding. So I was asked to, with another guy, to go and check out this tower. Went up, lifted the lid to go, and you could just smell and the sight of some guy's head. With 7.62 made a bit of a mess. That makes sense. So that had a bit of a
it would have a bit of a mess. Yeah,
absolutely. So so they got that cleaned up. I actually felt sorry for the first person that actually went back into that tower after they cleaned it up, if that makes sense. But yeah, so that was a bit of a culture shock. But that again, the bearing on me was, I need to get out of here. I need to be doing something that I enjoy. So the first opportunity I got, I was on the plane straight over to Plymouth to start up to do the commando course, which I absolutely loved. So yeah, so we ended up at Royal Citadel. Quite a grim. When you arrive there at 8 o'clock in the evening and it's chucking down with rain in the winter, the Royal Citadel down in Plymouth is quite an intimidating, because it's it's an old fort type thing.
Yeah.
Big doors. You knock on the door and hello. I, Gunnar Hawks, I'm here.
Yeah, like you rang. Yeah.
But I absolutely loved it. The commando course, absolutely loved it. And as it happened, there was quite some really good lads that ended up passing and going through. But the whole of the course that we were on were all destined to go to 79 Battery, who were heading over to Belize at the time. They were short of people, so everybody that passed had to go to 79 Battery, which was not on my radar. I wanted to go to 7 Battery because they were up in Arbroath, Scotland. Bit of a black sheep organisation, but they were heading over to Northern Ireland. So right. I feigned injury on my ankle. So we sort of passed the course. Once you pass the all arms course at the Royal Citadel, you then headed over to do the proper commando course. It's still the all arms course, but you did with the Royal Marines, and then you did that for 5 weeks or 7 weeks or whatever.
Was that Limston?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
So when we finished the hardest bit, without a shadow of doubt, was the Royal Citadel, because lots of people volunteered to do it, and they whittled you right down, and you were fit as a brass monkey by the time you finished it. But at the end of it, they were calling names out, and I put my hand out. I said, "Listen, my ankle, my pin," and they knew, and it's funny because they started giggling. They knew because they knew that I wanted to go to Arbroath, to go to Northern Ireland. And they said, "Oh, okay, Hawks, okay, go back to the block." And so I had to then wait 3 weeks before the next course, and then just started from scratch again, and then just went through up to Limston. And as it happened, I actually found the Royal Marines training quite easy, and I think it was because I was a bit older. The parachute regiment was flipping hard, because as a young 17-year-old kid, your body's not fully matured. But I found P Company flipping really, really hard, really difficult. Scraped through it, got through it, and everything else. And but then when you're a bit older, and it's your body's a bit more mature. So when I did the all arms course at the age of 20, 17 and 20, your body's totally different. If that makes sense. Yeah. So I loved it. I loved the training. Did really well in it, as it happened, and ended up getting my dream move up to Arbroath, and off we went. And there's 3 of us, just 3 of us, volunteered to go, because everybody in 2-9 wants to be in the Sunshine Batteries down in Plymouth, because it's fantastic. But 3 of us volunteered to go up to Scotland, to Arbroath. Middle of nowhere, little fishing village up in Arbroath.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and the first trip we did was Northern Ireland, South Armagh.
And what year was that?
Yeah, so we went to, but based in Besbrook generally, but we had Newton Hamilton, Crossmaglen, all that area. We just rotated round, but it was a great tour. It was 4.5 months. But South Armagh at the time, because you had 2 para were there, because they'd obviously lost all their people at Warren Point. But you had 2 para, you had 4-1 commando, who it was their last tour, and that's who we were attached to. Because straight after that tour, 4-1 commando then went into suspended animation, and out of sight really. So it was a really good tour. We didn't have any major incident. It was, a really nice, quiet tour. But for me, it was, I wanted to join the military. I'm not a camp soldier. I do not like being sat in a camp. It just bores the pants off me, and I'll explain it all later on why that came about. But I just like being out of the camp. So being in Northern Ireland was just fantastic. I loved it. Loved the tour, and I like the people that, you know, as it happened, the military had a bit of a negative attitude to Catholics in general over there, and where we were, Besbrook, was a very, very Catholic area.
Yeah.
So everybody was viewed with suspicion. You know, bear in mind that the IRA is only a small, tiny percentage, whereas the majority of people in Northern Ireland Catholics are fantastic, lovely people. But as a young military guy, that it doesn't come across that way. You know, you're indoctrinated that everybody must be a bad person. And the poor old Catholics, you know, especially on a Sunday when they were going to church, they were getting a car stripped for no other reason other than being a Catholic, to be honest. And you know, and that at the time it didn't really resonate at the time, but it did later on when I started doing my undercover stuff over in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Because I had a few mates. I had one mate who served in Northern Ireland, and he was a Catholic as well. And I think that people are people. What we've all got in common is we're human beings, aren't we? And I know, and I believe there's only a few bad people in the world. It's just that they move around a lot.
Yeah, to be honest, I found Belfast one of the nicest, friendliest cities. And that was during the bad times. I did quite a lot of undercover stuff over there later on, and absolutely loved Belfast. Got to know it like the back of my hand.
Yeah.
Got to know it better than any other city I've known, purely because you had to.
Yeah.
But speaking to people, you know, in the hard, you know, the Anderson Town and the Turf Lodge area, New Lodge, and all that, you know, Ardoyne, friendly people. Thing is, at the time, I had really long hair. My nickname was Jesus or Custer. You know, when I went back to Hereford, I had this long hair. Tell Custer to get his hair cut. I think he's on the Op Sugar, which was the undercover stuff. So I didn't look military at all. And I, when I was speaking to the Irish population, I never ever tried to speak with an Irish accent because they suss you out immediately.
Yeah, of course they do.
But at the time, there's a lot of Brits over there. Plus, you had the university, Queen's University.
And what year was this?
So the Northern Ireland doing the undercover was 93, 94,
right?
Sort of time. The initial Northern Ireland tour that I did was 1989.
Okay, so the 1989 sets you up for 93. So what happens between 1989, the first tour of Northern Ireland, and then what triggers the next move, if you like?
Yeah, so I was quite lucky, really. So in 29, we used to do Norway every year because that was our role, the Arctic role. So that got me into, you know, the skiing and you know, the Arctic role in general. And it, you know, we were doing that for 3 months. So you'd go out there on really early January or some.
Hey, do you enjoy sipping a good glass of wine? As you know, sipping too much wine can leave you feeling groggy in the mornings. For less than the price of a good bottle of wine, you can gain access to valuable business and life resources gained from my over 37 years in business and 15 years in the military. These world-class resources are designed to help you achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations you deserve. So visit joelteams.com now to find out more. That's JOETEAMS.com to find out more.
Right, just in case. So yes. So what then? Before the 94 tour, 93, 94, what prompted you to join the military? Because I know you said you were doing stuff in Norway.
So we did Norway every year. But as it transpired, because we were doing that every year, I could actually plan my year 2 years in advance.
Yeah.
And remember what I was saying, that that I wasn't enjoying being a camp soldier. I didn't like being in the camp, and a lot of people do. A lot of people like ironing their kit and looking smart and marching about and saluting. That wasn't for me. I like being out on exercise and doing all that sort of stuff. So it then got into my head that I needed to get away from here now. I've been and I actually thought about deserting and joining the French Foreign Legion for 5 years and then coming back, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But some sensible individual, when I was on a course, said, why don't you go and volunteer to do the SAS? And I went, yeah, okay then. But before I could do that, I snuck myself on a para course, and much to the disgust of the medical orderlies, because I did the para course, came back, went to the med centre with my docs that said no parachuting, and said, listen, I've just done a course down at Bryce Norton, and bear in mind that the pin was still in my ankle, and they said, who said you could do that? And I went, no one. I just did it. And
so that wasn't jumping out tactically. That was actually a parachute course for a few days, was it? Or
no. This is the basic para course. So
was it? Oh, right, okay.
Ended up, absolutely. So got my wings, parachute wings. Managed to get that scraped off of documents that I couldn't parachute, because if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have been able to join the SAS.
You wouldn't go to Hereford. How did you manage that then? Because how did you get past the records on that?
Yeah, quite sneaky. So I was on leave at the time, and I got a phone call from the clerk, because everyone else was away on leave as well. Yeah. And I got a phone call saying, Mick, there's a para course on down at Bryce. Do you fancy putting yourself on it? It means you're going to miss your leave. And I went, I don't care. I'm on there. So I drove down to Bryce Norton straight away, got myself in on it. And then 4 weeks later, went back to Arbroath with my wings and was happy. So yeah, they weren't too impressed that but it just got. But what it showed me was the medical diagnosis initially was a bit OTT, and you can understand why they want to look after the young lads and this, that, and the other. But that decision to say you can't parachute actually ruined my parachute regiment career, which I was quite bitter and twisted about, because that's all I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So coming back and then doing the para course, got me back on track, because then I knew I could then go and do SAS selection, if that makes sense. And so thereafter, so having done so many Norways, so 1986, before that, we've obviously done the Falklands. Now, the Falklands campaign for us was fantastic, because it was, for me, later on in life, looking back on the Falklands, was the last really old-fashioned warfare that you could do. It was fixed bayonets, map and compass, and away you went. And in the Royal Artillery, I was never on the guns. I was never firing the big guns. I was always at the other end, directing the gunfire, OPs. So we were working with 4-5 Commando, and with their, and I was with Yankee Company, of 4-5 Commando while we did the walk across. Now not halfway, but about a third of the way through the walk, or the tab across, my ankle started playing up, and actually my ankle started to fester. Because I had the scar on there, which was an old scar.
Yeah.
I then went down to try and get the pin taken out in 1981, and they failed to get it out because it'd been in so many years now that the bone had grown around it.
Yeah.
So I had this old scar on there that was, I found it quite difficult to get it fully recovered. I used to scratch it and stuff like that. So bit of an open sore. Anyway, because of the peat bog and the softness of the ground in the Falklands, my ankle started to go quite gammy, I suppose. And when we got to Mount Kent, ready to do in preparation for the attacks on Two Sisters, I was persuaded by the other 3 members of our 4-man team to go down and get my ankle seen with the doctor down at the RAP first aid post.
Yeah.
So I went down there and they looked at me in horror and said, "Listen, you need to be Kazivacs back to the Uganda, which was the hospital ship."
Hospital ship, yeah.
Yeah, and I thought, no, I'm not. I am not tabbing all this way here, or yomping all the way here, just before the battles to be taken off. So I completely ignored the advice. So got it. I said, "Listen, can you tape it up? I'll then go back and get all my kit, and then blah blah blah." Anyway, so I ignored that, and a day later, I was sort of looking through my binoculars, turned around to see the medical doctor storming up the hill to where our position was, and he was absolutely livid, and gave me a bit of a bollocking, saying I was ignoring his orders and stuff like that, and get my kit sorted because he's going to escort me down there. And as it happened, the battery commander just happened to be wandering past, heard the conversation, and me sort of saying, "No, I'm not going. I'm happy." And he just said, "Listen," to the orderly, to the officer. He said, "Listen, Hawkes has made his decision. We'll go with that, So thankfully, they allowed me to continue. So we did the attacks. Everything went smoothly and everything else, in warfare, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then we actually I actually got on the Canberra to come back, and everyone was partying and everything else. I was in the hospital for the whole duration on a drip because the ankle had got that bad,
Right.
and everything else. But I was happy that they allowed me to continue, because the thought of walking all that way, and like I say, I like being out in the sticks. I'm not a campy type person at all.
And yeah, to have gone all that way and then to leave your comrades when they're going into battle and you're put in a med centre effectively, I mean, you would have been gutted, wouldn't you?
To be honest, yeah, it would have been the worst setback you could ever have. For a young soldier, he joins the army. Well, most people do, to go to war. That's what you're trained to do. And so when one does come along, and there wasn't that many major conflicts in them days.
No, there wasn't.
Northern Ireland, and then the Falklands came up. So that was it, and so to be told that medically, I could still tab, I could still walk on it. Yes, it was blown up and it was an irritant, but it certainly didn't stop you doing anything else. And so I was happy to finish the campaign. But like I say, suffered for it in the end, by going back and being in the hospital on a drip for the duration. But yeah,
and I remember that time vividly because I volunteered for the Falklands. The thing is, I was in BAOR, British Army on the Rhine, Germany, and the only forces, I do believe, unless they were specialists, the only forces were UK based. And they didn't take anyone. They didn't take anyone from Germany because at the time we had the Cold War, and we didn't know what was going to go on with the Russians, the Ruskies.
Yeah.
So
the frustrating thing for us was, so we had 3 Commander Brigade, which was ourselves, so 4-5, 4-2, 40 Commando, and the 2 para battalions, and so that's quite a strong organisation. You had your elements of 5-9, 2-9 artillery, 9 squadron, all the other end, bringing it all together. So when we got to Mount Kent, it was frustrating to spend time at Mount Kent while you're having to wait for Fire Brigade, as it happened. So the Guards, the Gurkhas, and other elements that were sort of coming in. And we just thought, let's just get on with it and crack on. So it was, we found that a bit frustrating, of the whole campaign, I suppose. But it was, like I say, it was a good old fashioned, map compass, a bit of grit and determination, quite a heavy pack on your back, and away you went, and just get started. And I greatly admired the Argentinians, when you actually took positions, because they were up against, when you think they're up against the cream of the British military, I suppose.
Yeah.
And these lads, they put up a hell of a fight, and good on them. But you could just tell that they weren't interested in being there. They were sent there to fight in a war that they had no real interest in being there. And it's cold, miserable, wet, snow. Probably the worst time of year for an Argentinian to fight a campaign as well. So. No, it's something enjoyable, and in a way, I'm really glad that I finished it. And then, but thereafter, it was my aim. Thereafter was to then join Special Forces, because having seen how the regiment operated down there, I just thought, this is for me. And as it happened, I was on a Kenya trip, and we were working with the Royal Highland Fusiliers, and we did a bit of jungle training. And there's two regiment lads in there, 2 SAS guys doing the teaching, and they just, their attitude, don't call me that, just call me Bob, and the beards, and their sort of laid back attitude, that appealed to me massively, and that really was a catalyst, really. Also, when I was on the commando course, I obviously saw the Iranian embassy siege that went through, because that was going on as I was on my commando course. So, you got a rough taste for it, really, and it I suppose parachute regiment commando, it's the natural route.
It's the progression. It's the progression, isn't it? It's the stage, the stepping stones. Yeah,
absolutely. At the time I was a bombardier, pushing sergeant, but career-wise, I wasn't interested. I'm not a careery type. I just wanted to be, where the soldiering was to be at, So off I went, and I did 2 selections. Bizarrely, my first selection, which is in 1986, was the worst weather ever for doing SAS selection. And it was a winter course, and the weather was that bad in 86 that they had to cancel test week, first time ever. But they cancelled test week, and a week later they realised that the weather wasn't improving. You just got to get on with it. And on the second test route, which was a place called Elan Valley,
I know. I know Elan Valley well. Yeah.
Well, I got called off the back of the truck first, so off I went, and I kid you not, the snow was up to your groin,
right.
And you were trailblazing, and away you went. And all I can remember, the second last checkpoint, the chief instructor was there, and he just took me to one side and said, "Listen, step off, and let somebody else do the trailblazing." Because everyone else is in your footsteps, really.
Yeah.
And I, because you're so keen as mustard, I totally ignored that advice and carried on. And all I can remember is getting to the final checkpoint and then waking up in the helicopter. And as it transpired, what happened was I'd got pure exhaustion and hypothermia was kicking in. And what the instructor said was, I put my Bergen down, picked his Bergen up, put it on, and ran in the opposite direction to where he said I should be going. So they obviously tackled me, and I was out completely. And then woke up in the helicopter. So when I was in the sick bay in Hereford back at Stirling Lines, I assumed that I'd be okay to go the following day because I hadn't had any gypsies warning, and I thought, that'll be my gypsies.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, because you're allowed one gypsies warning. And the training major came in, who X2 para guy, major. He came in and said, "Listen, the doctors are not allowing you to go back out tomorrow. So unfortunately for you, this is the end." So I completely demoralised. Ended up going back to Arbroath. Bit of a kick in the teeth actually, because I'd set my heart on getting through, and failing SES selection is a massive kick in the groin for anyone. Anyone that's it's quite a nasty shock. So
by the way, in case you're not getting what trailblazing is, it means that you were the guy at the front. You were in fresh snow, so no one had trodden it before. So you're up to your gonads, up to your groin in snow, pushing through for the whole time. And you're not talking like half a mile walk. You've got 70 pound plus your weapon and water or whatever else you're carrying, going some pace.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that really brought it all home to me afterwards. When I was feeling down, I just thought, and actually they wrote a fantastic report. So when I got back to Hereford, they said, back to Arbroath, they said, "Listen, have a look at that report." And it came from the same major.
Right.
They said, "Listen, get Hawkes back on the next course." And as it transpired, I met my future wife during that period. So while I was training, I met my future wife Kim up in Arbroath, and long story short, we ended up having 4 fantastic children.
Wow, brilliant.
So I actually put off going back on selection for a couple of years, and as it happened, I ended up being an instructor down at Plymouth, doing the all arms course before I went back on selection. So I was an instructor down there. Thoroughly enjoyed my time down in Plymouth, doing training the sort of new youngsters that were then sort of going through, and I had a lot of sympathy for a lot of people. A guy recently got in touch with me and said, "Mick, you might not remember me, but I was he was he in the engineer? No, he was Remy Tech, and on the all arms course, he very nearly jacked his hand in on the march out, because it was quite a hefty tab off Dartmoor.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I picked him up, managed to get him going, and he actually finished it. Then went to Limston and passed the course. And what he said was he after a couple of years he transferred to the Royal Marines as an officer, and he said your motivation sort of resonated with me and stuck with me, because if you hadn't have helped me, he would have failed that course and probably not gone on to do what he had done. So that, in a way, that was nice to get that feedback, because I wasn't the shouty, gobbing off type instructor for me, because my goal was to get back on selection.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, I'm going to help you people as best I can. So because I was mega fit, anyone that was struggling, I used to grab their kit and come on, that's and then when you'd see all the other instructors, you'd hand it all back to him, and yeah, he's done it on his own, yeah, but for me it was the thing to do, helping people.
And that's a brilliant attitude to have, because like one of the things that I always talk about, I know we've touched on this, about how important a mentor and a coach is in your life. And And yeah, I could shout and scream as good as any other instructor like yourself, but I'd much rather say, come on, yeah, mate, let's have a look at this. What can we do? How are we going to get you through this? And yeah, because interestingly, you would have probably, well, I guess you would have done definitely. You know, when you take a bunch of blokes out for a run, you can tell within the first half mile who's going to struggle, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we had a thing called Heartbreak Hill in Plymouth,
Yeah,
and the guys used to hate running up and down that. Absolutely hated it. But what we did was, so you had all the fit lads at the front, and then you had the people that were struggling at the back. So what we used to do was we used to transfer it, reverse it, get the weakest at the front, and every time the one of the weak people would sort of struggle, we would all end up going back down again, and then starting again, and it just got that teamwork going where everybody was encouraging the weaker ones to get up, and it did. You know, it worked. There's a method in, you know, whatever matters in the method or whatever. But it
yeah,
seemed to work because and every time, so I did 3 courses, I think, before I actually went on selection again, and I got really nice little gifts at the end
yeah,
of it, which proofs in the pudding, I suppose. And it's funny because when I was actually in the SAS, I was on the med course, and one of the young lads that were in there who was in A squadron said, "Oh, mate, can you remember me?" And I went, "No, I can't. Sorry, I can't." He said, "Flipping, oh, you were my instructor."
oh wow.
Yeah, and you're like that. And I said, first question was I okay? And he went, "Yeah, you were brilliant. It's the other people that we didn't like."
Oh well, that's
um,
good. So good cop, bad cop. You were always the good cop. So
yeah, absolutely. Because you know, I'd been there, done that, had nothing to prove really. And like I say,
yeah,
I was just biding my time. And at the time, Kim had just had our first child,
yeah,
Connor. So Connor was literally a month old when I went on selection. So he was born in the December, and then off I went to to do selection.
So
Uh,
basically, yeah. So basically, your time down at the Oil Arms course was you allowing yourself to regroup, wasn't it? Really?
yeah, it was, and because basically, because they knew in our broth that you know I wanted to go back on selection, and I was a bit of a grouch up there, not really. I wouldn't say not interested, but you know, again, we were back to camp soldiering, which is not my forte. So
Yeah,
this position came up down in Plymouth on the All Arms course, and really it was the perfect place to be, and I you know thank Sem Battery up in Arbroath for doing that for me, because that move actually probably got me through the right attitude to go back on selection,
yeah, yeah.
if that makes sense. And it was also good because you were helping other people, you know, on the start of their career,
Yeah.
joining commando, like you know. So it was good.
And I know what you mean because I never did find bulling boots for parade that interesting. I'd much rather be out in the field doing it on tactical. We had some great ideas for getting dems on bridges going along, and the training major just thought, he put his hand on his head and he just said, "Yeah, listen, I'm not sure I agree with this, but just go on, fill your boots." So yeah.
I actually, you know, the amount of times I got picked up on parade, you know, because I used to wear my beret slightly different. You know, my cap badge was not over my eye, but
Yeah,
slightly
same
below.
as, yeah, same as.
Yeah, and my denims. So at the time, my denims, if you know, they were a lot different to everyone else's because they were really old. Because what I did was I used to patch them, so I would put a patch on the knee or something, and then you know, and I went it, and they, for me, you know, that's how to do it. You know, you don't bend it and just put brand new ones on. You know, everyone can do that. So I always used to get picked up on parade, and you know, it was just, oh really, you know, and it wasn't my thing at all. You know, marching around TikTok. It
Yeah,
was for some people. It was, you know, there's people that enjoyed doing that side of things, but it wasn't for me really. And to be honest, my out was going on selection, which was great.
So you tip up at Hereford now. You're on second selection. How's your mind doing at this point?
Quite difficult because because you've got that knockback. You're then thinking, if I fail this another time, that's me finito. So the determination's more to get yourself through this time, and I was quite lucky that I managed to get to the start of test week with no injuries, because that's the aim of the game for people that do SAS selection. You need to start test week, which is then the third week of the course, which is a culmination of six days of doing longer marches, heavier weights, harder and harder, and finishing with that 48-mile or 48-mile long walk, which is the endurance, basically, which is a bit of a beast. So you really need to be starting that week with no injuries, because if you've got an injury at the very start of it, it's going to get worse and worse and worse, because there's no time for recovery.
There's no respite, is there? It's just on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you what's quite ironic, on the very, was it the fourth day of selection at the time, was a thing called the fan dance. So I'm bearing in mind that up to about 200 people volunteered to do SAS selection. We had about 170, 180, something like that. And the fan dance will get rid of about 70 people, because there's no second chances on fan dance. Because what it does is it tells the instructors who they've actually put the homework in beforehand, before getting there. And if you fail the fan dance, that's just all that is. They're just telling people that you obviously didn't do any training before you came, so it's obviously not for you. But it's quite a brutal. It's a march up the penny fan, down the other side, turn around, and then back over again. And the way they gauge the timing is actually done on the day of the march, or after it, I suppose. And they go, listen, the weather's nice, underfoot was quite decent, a bit like a race course. The underfoot, so the timing will be, and they just stick a red line through the names, and everybody on that red line and below it instantly failed, and that can be up to about 70 people that are gone on it. So if you have a bad day on the fan dance, you're not going to get through it, if that makes sense.
Because I remember pre-selection, and there were 67 of us, and I was an old timer at the time. I'd been a PTI, so I'd really done my homework and done the training. I came third. The guys that beat me, when we got on the hills, were finished.
Yeah,
because they didn't.
It's a different mentality, and it's a different type of fitness. The fittest guy I have ever met in my life was a chain smoker, and he was DS. It was the
Really?
stuff. Yeah, he was a DS on my selection, and he was running up the fan dance where everyone else is tabbing, running, talking to you while he's all right, how's it going, Oxy? And as soon as that's finished, that gets tossed, and he's got another one out, and he oh my life. Chain smoker. And I think it was just one of them where his lungs were just massive capacity.
Yeah.
He was a chain smoker, and he was this guy. But as you pointed out, running on a road, running on flat is different to tabbing if that makes sense. And
yeah, it does. So you tip up, you're on it, you're on fan dance, good. You're on test week, and what's going on in your mind?
Yeah, this is it now. The start of test week is this is it. It's all or nothing now. Let's get through this, and thankfully, with no injuries, I came second on the endurance at the very end.
Well done.
Yeah, so there was a parachute regiment lad who didn't really excel, you know, in all the other tabs, but just on the long walk, or the long drag as they call it,
Yeah.
he was away, and off he went, and I kid you not, I came in second, and he was 3 hours before me, and he was that quick that they actually took him back in a Land Rover, back to camp, rather than waiting around for the rest of us. So I then got back. Was the first
3 hours.
3 hours in front of the second guy. Yeah, absolutely. So I then got something to eat at the end of it, and they said, listen, just get your head down, Hawksy, get on the back of the truck, get yourself in a sleeping bag, and rest up. And as soon as we get enough people on the back of the vehicle, we'll take you all back. So I was waiting for about another 6 hours, before the slow dregs of people were coming on, like, and as soon as we had a few on there, off we went back, and it's just that elation really of finishing, and then getting ready for, but that's the easy part of SAS selection done, believe it or not, because you're then straight into the jungle phase, and without a shadow of doubt, the hardest part of SAS selection. Running up and down a hill, easy. Doing the jungle phase, because it not only is it physically demanding, it's mentally draining as well.
Because that's your continuation training then, isn't it? So what?
Yeah.
So you're in the jungle, right? And it's unlike a living room where you've got a settee or a chair to sit on. In the jungle, right? Apart from the humidity and the rains and the heat, you've got stuff that if you sit down in the wrong place, it can be a little bit scary, can't it?
Yeah, and I'll tell you what was funny as well is so Connor was really young when I first started doing selection. So when we got to the jungle, he was a couple of months old, and this guy walked up to me from another patrol. So we had the patrol base, and he came up and said, "Oh, Mick, I understand your son's quite young," and I stopped him in his tracks. I said, "Shut up. Don't even go there, because when you go into the jungle, your mind has got to be 100% on what you're doing.
Yeah.
You can't start thinking about what's happening at home, because if you do that, your mind starts playing tricks on you." And as it transpired, that guy that had that conversation with me, I think he was trying to reach out just to speak to someone about what he was going through. And I was absolutely dismissive of that. The next morning, he'd sacked it. He'd handed his kit in and went. But it had when one person gives up in the jungle, it has a massive domino effect. And every day there's people canning it and leaving, because some jungle selections nobody comes off it. And it's that mindset thing. Once one goes,
it's a domino effect.
Yeah, absolutely. And without shadow of doubt, it was tough going. I had quite a hardy old DS who didn't take any prisoners at all. He was very, he was quite hardcore. Not a lot of people. As soon as he knew that you were in his patrol, people automatically went, "Good luck with that one," because he, ex-paratrooper, he wasn't there to help you. He was there to make sure that you were up to speed. And as it happened, I ended up joining his squadron. I went to B Squadron, and he was in B Squadron as well. So you can understand, where the DS are coming from. That they want only the best to go and join their squadron, like.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, once you finish your training, that's your ticking the box to learn, isn't it? A license to learn, because you don't know everything at that stage, and they need to know that when you say jump, it's like how high, and I'll do it again and again and again, and you're there when you need it.
Yeah, it's funny because when at the end of the jungle phase, they have a big piss up. And a barbecue for everyone, and it's good because you lose so much weight. When you come in, so it's a good way of stocking back up again. But when you could tell the people that have probably passed and the people that have failed just by the reaction of some of the DS when they're walking around talking to people and stuff like that. And my indicator was the chief instructor on the final exercise in the jungle. He was coming around and he was asking the patrol certain questions, technical questions, about military and this, and he got behind me and he just said, Hawksy, you're probably just about ugly enough to be in this unit, and then walked off. And when I got back, everyone went, did he ask you that question? And I went, yeah. He went, flipping hell, you probably passed then. And I just didn't think much of that. But he was right. It was for me that was a bit of an indicator.
Without giving anything operationally sensitive, what sort of stuff are they looking for from you in the jungle?
Yeah, they're looking for people. Bearing in mind that I was a corpsman, so Royal Artillery.
Yeah.
You're not so you're a corps individual, parachute regiment people. So what they're looking for, so a parachute regiment individual in the jungle should be head and shoulders above a corps person. Now that doesn't matter. What they're after, what they're looking at, is people that can be told what to do, and that individual does what they're told to do without messing it up. You can mess it up once, you mess it up a second time, it tells them that you're not the right person. But also what they're looking for is people that can work as a team. They're not individuals. You can get on with other people. You can help other people. We had a guy in our patrol who was struggling with the radio. And every time at the end of a patrol, when we knew that the last kilometre was going to be a real fast chap, he would sort of start complaining and saying, "Oh, can someone else take the race?" Because he knew that the last kilometre was going to be, shifted back. And I always ended up with the radio, if that makes sense. And so again, that tells the DS that this individual can help out and stuff like that. So. Yeah, they're after teamwork, people that can work with other people, but also can be told to do something and get on with it without messing it up, if that makes sense. So
good. So you get back to camp after that, after being told you're ugly enough, probably.
Well, it's funny because the selection that we were on, nobody got told pass or fail until you actually got back to Hereford. So we flew back, and then when you got back to Hereford, there was a massive list on the wall, and it was these people have passed, these people, and it's funny because there was a lad who was in 40 Royal Artillery with me, who was now a staff sergeant in the artillery. He was on selection. And we actually, between us, we actually thought he'd done quite well. But unfortunately, he was one of the people that was on the list to report to the chief instructor the following morning. And I never saw him again. Never got the opportunity really to discuss, what was going through his mind and stuff like that. It was very cutthroat. You're on the list, you're going to be staying. You're not on the list, or you're on that list, so you're going to hand your kit in. And away they went. So, but thereafter, we then got a long weekend. So it was the first time I've managed to see my son for about 3 months, if that makes sense. So drove back down to Plymouth. Saw Kim and catch up with Connor. Tell him that I was okay. And getting through the jungle phase. It generally means that there's a good chance that you're actually going to pass selection here, because the next phase thereafter was combat survival. And combat survival is a thing where generally everybody should pass, but quite bizarrely, again, on our selection, we lost 4 people on combat survival. Yeah, and so combat survival, it's as it says on the tin. Teaches you how to evade capture initially, but then teaches you how to go through the interrogation phase, conduct under capture and stuff like that. So quite an infamous stage of selection, I suppose.
And that's where the mind games really come in, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it did. And I'll tell you what was funny. So when we were on the run, there's a two-para lad, good, really good lad, good soldier. He had it in his mind that when he got captured, because a lot of people get captured in that initial bit, you know, you're on the run for 6 days, and at some stage, you know, you are going to get captured. But what they do is they give you a bit of a hard time, tactical questioning, that sort of thing. And then they throw you back out into the field to continue, because it's a phase where, you know, you've got to get to the 6th day of it on the run. And then you then end up in the bag getting captured properly, and then going through the interrogation. So if you're captured on, you know, the 1st day, 2nd day, 3rd day, they then throw you back out. So you've got another 5 days on the run. But for some reason, he just had it in his head when he got captured. That for him, that was a big black mark against him. That's him failed. So he refused to go back out on the run, because he said, you know, I failed, so waste of time. So he'd just got it in his head that he'd failed. So that was number one gone. When we then got into being captured, going through the capture phase, and you're hooded up and you're listening to loud, you know, music and white noise and all the stuff you go through. Yeah. Well, there's another guy who started hyperventilating in his mask. So that was him gone. A young guardsman. So he went. There's another guy who just didn't like stress positions. So just
well, that wouldn't have been very good then, would it? Eh?
So that was 3 gone already. Now normally, everybody that gets to combat survival generally passes, but all of a sudden we've lost 3 people.
Yeah.
Now for some reason, when we were on the run, for some bizarre reason, the DS actually thought I had diarrhea. I'd no idea where that came from. So every time I went in for interrogation, there was a glass of water on the desk, and they would look at it and say, "Drink that," and I would grab it gladly and chuck it down my throat and put it back. And at the end, when we came out of the when it had all finished, the training, the chief instructor came up and said, "Right, Hawksy, how are you feeling? How's your diarrhea?" And I went, "I didn't have diarrhea." They got me mixed up with someone else, and some poor bugger had gone through all that phase with diarrhea without getting
and still got through it. That's great.
We think he got, he did, he did, because only one other person.
Have you ever wondered what is going to happen to all your knowledge, wisdom, and skills when you die? Yeah, me too. That is exactly the reason why I created JoeTeam.com, so I can leave a legacy for my children and for other successful people who are just like you. For less than 40 pence per day, you get access to valuable business and life resources gained from my over 37 years in business and 15 years in the military. These world-class resources are designed to help you achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations you deserve. So visit joeteams.com now to find out more. That's JOETEAMS.com, joeteams.com to find out more.
So anyway, so when we got out, we started talking, as you do. And I said, to be honest, I think I might have failed here. And they said, well, why is that? I said, well, when I was in a stress position, someone came up on my side and put a bit of bread in my hand and said, quickly eat that. And I chucked it in my mouth and said, cheers, mate. And because I'd said cheers, mate, I actually thought I'd failed, because it was the big 4, the name, rank, number. And that was all you could say. So that was playing, and I actually thought I'd failed. And this guy went, "Oh, I'll tell you what, mate." He says, "I think I've failed." He said, because I nodded my head at one of the questions. And, they could use that, they could record that in a different question. Did you slaughter these women?
Yeah.
That sort of. So we was anyway. This guy came up on the side of us and went, "Oh, is that what you did?" And we sort of looked at him and went, "Yeah." He went, "Oh," he says. Anyway, so what he did, he actually got into talking to the instructors, the interrogators, telling them all about himself. And he said, "But it's all right because I just, I didn't give anything away." And we just looked at each other and went, "Actually, we think you could be in trouble here." And we've got back and it was his name that was on because the other three had gone already, and he was the fourth one to fail because they blabbed on interrogation. If that makes sense. So yeah, so losing four was a bit of a culture shock. But that got us through that phase, and then the final phase really is the tactical training where you did the anti-terrorist training, black kit.
Yeah.
Make sure that you were good to go, and also you do a signals course as well, because your first job in the SAS, you are the troop signaller, so you need to learn Morse code to a good standard, and get that. So it was that, and then all the guys that weren't paratrained ended up going to Bryce Norton to go and do their para course.
Yeah, to get them. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, initially, sometimes it was after you got badged. So, well done, you passed selection. You got your berry, but a couple of courses before ours, I think, there was a guy who'd been passed selection, so went down to Bryce Norton with an SAS berry. Anyway, refused to jump in one of the, and I think it was the balloon.
Which can be the scariest for some because you got no engine noise, you just got wind blowing through the wires, haven't you? Yeah.
But it's funny because what happened was the balloon had been cancelled, so they then went and did 3 jumps from the C-130.
Yeah.
And then they said, "Listen, you've got to go and do the balloon." And when it spooked him and he refused to jump. But because he was officially T2 SES, they said, "Right, we're never going to do that again. What's going to happen is, you're going to go with your parent unit, bury on, and then do your jumps. And if you do fail, it's because of, you're from the infantry or something like that."
Yeah.
They changed all that. So the odd few sort of went down to Bryce Norton. We went off. I think we got a bit of time off. So I went back to Plymouth to pack up my married quarter and sort of celebrate passing with people. Went into camp into C29. The RSM called me in the office and sat me down, had a cup of tea with him. Because for them it's it's a bit of a sort of knee up, I suppose, because they have an individual now that's passed SAS selection. So he was fantastic. He was just what you expected from an RSM. Tap on the back, well done, mate, and then just crack on for the rest of your career,
Yeah. And I suppose it's a bittersweet moment as well. Sweet in the fact that they've got someone who's passed selection, and bitter in the fact that they're losing someone who's good in the unit.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I spent most of my time up in Arbroath with 7 battery, and I never really got a send off, because I got posted down to do the all arms course, and then just went on selection. So when I left, you'll probably notice behind me there was no artillery stuff at all.
Yeah.
In my office, it's all 2-2 stuff, and I've got a commando dagger, and I got a picture of the Falklands, but nothing from 29 Commando. You just missed that, but so what? It was moving on to bigger and better things like.
So now you've passed selection, you've got your beret, you're feeling top of the world, you've moved into quarters at Hereford, and what's going on now for you?
Yeah, so well, I'll tell you what, the bit of a culture shock. So actually passing the selection phase, there was no big deal about it. So we were all in the and it's in the old Stirling lines in Hereford, not the new one at Credden Hill. But so the RSM and the CO come in with the chief instructor, and you're all sat there. And what they do is that they just toss your berry over to you and say, well done. And they just call out your name. Right, Hawksy, you're off to B Squadron, and away you went. And at the time there was we had a fantastic sergeant major called Gonzo. So we went round, the four of us, and two of us wanted to go to mountain troop, bizarrely, because mountain troop is the one that least people want to go to. You know, they wanted, you know, air troop or boat troop or mobility, but very few people want to actually go to mountain troop. So two of us actually wanted to go to mountain troop, and the other two, one wanted to go to air troop and one wanted to go to boat troop. So we were looking at each other thinking, oh, probably one of us is going to have to go to mobility, which neither of us wanted to do. So I went in first, and Gonzo sat me down and said, right, Hawksy, where do you want to go to? What's your... And I said, well, mountain troop, if possible. I said, but I know there's a lad outside that also wants to go to mountain troop. He said, oh, don't worry about that. He said, they're short of people anyway. So off we went. We both ended up in mountain troop, which was great, because he was actually a proper climber, a mountaineer.
Yeah.
So I was a bit worried that it would be me that was going to end up going to mobility troop, but we ended up going to. So we'd gone in there, got back in, met everybody. Everyone was in civvies, because you've got every squadron had an interest room where everybody congregates. There's all the pictures, and I just happened to join B Squadron, who did the Iranian embassy siege. So there's a lot of the old pictures all about, and actually, one of the first person that greeted me was John McAleese.
Oh wow,
John Mack. Now he was at the time he was in mobility, but he sort of introduced me to the regiment and welcome, blah blah blah. The nicest guy you could ever meet. But he was on him and a guy called Rusty Furman, who's also on TV a lot and stuff, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
They were coming to the end of their careers, if that makes sense. But again, both really, really nice people. And to be honest, just normal individuals, fantastic people, great to talk to. There's no, it was just nice to be in an environment where there was none of that bullshit. It was, and everybody had a say. If you didn't think that was the right way of doing it, you could put your hand up and say, I've only been here 2 minutes, but have you thought about doing this? Oh, actually, yeah, that's not a bad idea. Well done.
Yeah.
And away you go, So it was good, and but they do a 2-year cycle. So 6 months you're on the anti-terrorist team. 6 months you're doing troop training. You're climbing stuff and all that lot. Another 6 months you're on operations, and then another 6 months you're doing a thing called team tasks, which is the most sought after 6 months, really, because that's where you go to all these different countries, teaching, SES stuff, anti-terrorism and this, that, and the other. But also you can earn quite a lot of money because they give you an overseas allowance for being there. But it was good because I was a sergeant now in the Royal Artillery, and you lose all your rank immediately. You then go to trooper, which is great, and but you don't get less money than what you were on before, and actually you're getting more money for being a trooper. So which I totally agree with. The SBS don't run that. They don't run that system, which they were found out about not that well, quite a few years ago. But really, if you're going into a special forces environment, really you should lose all your rank, and then you work on your time that you're there. If that makes sense. And I totally agree with that. And so it was really just getting straight back. And within I think within about 3 months of being in the squadron, we did our first overseas trip, and it was into New Zealand. Went out to New Zealand to do a lot of parachuting into the sea, a lot of climbing, climb Mount Cook, and stuff like that. So it was just, you know, a great way of getting embedded within the organisation. If that makes sense. But two was good because we had the Balkans War came up, and in the Balkans, actually just before we went to the Balkans, I volunteered to do 14 int, as it used to be called.
Yeah, 14 int. Yeah, I had that's an interesting experience.
Yeah. Well, it's for me, what the SES do is they every time. So the 14 int course is a 6-month course learning surveillance, close target recce, and CQB, close quarter battle. They're your core skills, if that makes sense. And so every course, so that you get 2 courses a year, a January and a July course, and the SES put 4 people on every course. Reason being, it's a fantastic skill to have. And if a regiment have got all these people that are 14 int trained, it means that they can work independently. They don't actually need 14 int. They can just go off and do their own thing. And that was the aim of it. So I volunteered to go on and do this training. You set yourself up on a pedestal, really, because SAS guys do fail. Generally, if you fail, it's because of surveillance.
Yeah.
Because you can imagine, because you've got the RoboCop effect, you can stand out somewhat when you're doing the surveillance.
Yeah.
So if you are going to fail it, it's generally the surveillance phase. So not everybody passes. We had one person failed on my course out the 4 of us, and it was obviously because of the surveillance. So we did the course, and then went and deployed, and I went to central, so Belfast.
Yeah.
And the central det at the time, so we were province wide, but generally had North Belfast, so the Ardoyne, Shankill, all these areas.
And what year was this?
93.
Right. Okay. So there were still interesting times then, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was still. When the Shankill bomb went off, I was about 200 meters down the road, covering another job on the Catholic side. So I was down at a place called Carlisle Circus, which is the bottom end of the Shankill.
Yeah.
The Shankill. So we were down there covering that. We had a very active 18 months, because your 2-year deployment is 6 months doing the course and then 18 months on the ground in Belfast. And that's where I picked up my QCB, Queen's Commendation for Bravery, on one of the operations there. And I can't really disclose too much about that because it's quite secretive. But suffice to say that when I was in Bosnia, so straight after Northern Ireland, when I was out in Bosnia, I got told that I had just been given the QCB, and the following day I got captured with Billy Binningham. So quite a mixed emotional couple of days, to say the least. But Northern Ireland was interesting because it's and bearing in mind that I had quite long hair, and I wasn't the best at surveillance. I was getting blown every 2 minutes. And what we mean by blown, not blown up, but
yeah,
people were recognising you for not being normal. It's because I had a very quite an aggressive mindset to doing surveillance, if that makes sense. So I was always the first one there. If they ever wanted we need someone to do walk past, I'm there. I was out the car and gone, walking past and stuff like that. And the downside of that is you there's a good chance you're going to get blown here. But
Yeah.
you know, it didn't bother me at all because I'm SAS and I'm 14 intelligence is not my career. I'm only there for 18 months, so I'm going to make sure that I can do as much as I can in that 18 months, and no interest really in being absolute code.
And I know for operational reasons, you're not able to disclose what went on. I do know to get the QCB, then you've gone above and beyond. So thank you for that. You then go to Kosovo, did you say, and told about the QCB, and then only a few hours later you captured with Billy Billingham. What are you able to talk about there, and what was your relationship with Billy?
Well, yeah. So I'm as it happens, I'm meeting Billy this afternoon in
Right,
Hereford.
okay. Well, say hello to him.
Yeah, we're at the Cozy Club having a couple of glasses of wine, just catching up really, and chatting about. But anyway, so we had a bit of a strange role in Bosnia, the SAS. We were the eyes and ears really of the general. Initially, General Jackson and General Smith and all the other people down there. So we didn't look and we didn't operate like UN. So we refused to wear UN blue stuff. Didn't wear any of the badges. We just wore our combat uniforms, smocks and stuff like that. And I just cracked on and basically just went about our business. Much to the annoyance of obviously to all the UN people, because when you at the time we were up in Bihać, which is in the southwest of the country. It was an enclave, Muslim enclave, and it was actually operated by 5 Corps. General Judakovic was the general in charge. He was quite a robust individual. And it was one enclave, Muslim enclave, but really stopped the Serbs coming through. You know, they managed to hold their line. So we were up in that area, and at the time we arranged for 2 generals to get together because it was UN still at the time. So we managed to get 2 generals together down at a place with a Serb general to do a meeting, and it was all to do with the upcoming sort of ceasefire, peace thing, blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff. So we got that in place, and the day before we went and wrecked the area just to make sure that we knew it and we were happy with it. And at the time, we went down and had a chat with the Serb front line. Now, you know, we don't wear body armor, and the reason why we didn't wear body armor is when you're speaking to frontline troops, they don't have body armor. So you turning up with your blue helmet on and your blue body armor, you lose all street credibility.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we just dress the same as what they do. You know, no body armor, stuff like that. And but it has a counter effect, and the counter effect obviously is if you get shot. But also because you don't look like UN, people just don't know who you are, and it causes a bit of suspicion. So the day before the meeting, we went down there, and the frontline troops of the Serbs, you know, they accepted us, you know, gave us a cup of coffee, full of sugar, as they do over there.
Yeah.
Had a chat with them, came back, yeah, okay. And then on the day of the meeting, the light infantry provided support and also an outer cordon. So they put a warrior vehicle between the meeting place and also the Serb side of it. So we set the meeting up, walked past waved at the lads. Right, lads, just going to go for a quick chat, as you do. Unbeknown to us that the Serb frontline had changed from the day before because they brought the general up. They brought all their sort of special troops up. So when me and Billy got down there, and all we had was sidearms, our SIGs. So when we went down there to speak to them, they obviously got a bit uppity and a bit spooked, and took us prisoner. You know, when you're surrounded by people with AKs, you ain't going to fight your way out of it.
No.
So literally took us prisoner. They initially took us into a local house, took our sidearms off us, took our maps off us, basic questioning. They then decided to put us in a vehicle and drove us all the way back to a place called Priador, which was way behind the serve lines, if that makes sense. And so me and Billy were sat in the back of the vehicle, and we obviously whispering to each other. And the guy in the front was a big burly, quite a muscular guy, and the driver was a captain or a major, sorry, in the military, spoke English. Anyway, so me and Billy are whispering at the back, and the Serb major said something to this guy, and he span round in his seat with his AK-47, directly in our faces, and then he cocked his weapon. And the funny thing is me and Billy looked at each other and we burst out laughing. And the reason being, mentality, you're on the front line. How come you're cocking your weapon on the front?
I was wondering that. How come his weapon's not ready?
and it's something like that. And anyway, so it spooked that guy who's holding the, because he's like that. Hold on, I've just cocked my weapon in their faces and they're laughing at me. So he obviously turned around quite miffed. And we then got into the camp, and the camp that they took us to was one of these notorious camps that had been on TV recently. It's where all they used to starve people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So a lot of prisoners getting, and they dragged us out, put us into a corridor, and I got dragged in first. Now I'd just come back from Northern Ireland, so knew all about giving a cover story. My cover story was, I've literally been here 2 weeks. I'm just a driver. I know nothing. So because all our maps were clean and we had no badges of rank and none of that, they took it as gospel that I was Mr. Thicky and knew nothing. So literally threw me out into the corridor. Billy had been on a Serbo-Croat course just before, and was actually the driver of the patrol driver. But Billy had learned a bit of Serbo-Croat, so when he went in for interrogation, decided that he was going to answer in a bit of Serbo-Croat. So they obviously put 2 and 2 together and thought he's the clever one, and the driver, Mr. Thicky out there, is just not worth talking to. So literally, Billy got dragged in about 4 or 5 times for interrogation.
Right.
Whereas I got left in the corridor. I was getting a bit of a kick in. Every now and then they'd sort of poke you in the ribs with a bayonet, and just roughing you up, trying to intimidate you, if that makes sense. But nothing, untoward or nothing, no big dramas. Anyway, so when Billy finally came out, after quite a long interrogation.
How much of a kicking did Billy get then?
Yeah, not much really, because he wasn't out there very long, because he was getting dragged in for interrogation, and I didn't see what was happening in the interrogation. They'd shut the door. So when we finally did get put together, sort of sat down there, sort of Billy whispered over, went, "No, mate, how come? How come I'm getting dragged in all the time?" He said, "What did you tell them?" I said, "Sorry, mate, but I just said I'm the driver." And Billy looked at me and went, "Yeah, but I'm the driver." Lose you lose, mate. Now, as it transpired, so the other 2 people in the patrol obviously realised that we'd been captured, rang the general up in Sarajevo, and what they did was they said, "Listen, go and arrest the Serb general. Go and arrest him now," which annoyed all the Danish UN people that were supposedly in charge. They got really annoyed when two other lads walked in there and said, "Listen, you're under arrest because your people have got 2 of our people." So they gave him a sat phone and said, "Listen, you make the phone call, and we want our 2 people. We want Billy and Mick back." as soon as possible. And if you don't, you're going to end up down the Muslim lines. And he pooped his pants apparently, and so that's what he did. So all of a sudden we got released, got brought back to that little house that we initially went to. They handed over our weapons and our maps, and then me and Billy walked back, and the light infantry are sort of shaking their heads, wondering what the hell are you two doing. But Billy was saying, he said, Billy said, flipping hell, I think we might get kicked out because of this. I went, hardly likely. I said, yesterday they've told me I've just been given a Queen's Commendation for bravery. They're highly unlikely, just because we got captured. Bear in mind that our maps were clear, so there was no. We didn't actually give anything away, and we actually got more intel from seeing what was going
on.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So we just did a detailed map assessment, ready, got that sent up to Sarajevo, and then it was business as normal, crack on. And the thing about it is we kept it very low key, very quiet. So the only people that knew about it was the four in the patrol, and also the general down in Sarajevo. So kept very, very quiet. So it didn't really come out. Now, Billy went on to do his TV career, and he was doing a session of Who Dares Wins.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so when it came to the combat survival thing, Billy let slip that he's actually been captured, but didn't sort of dwell on anything other than, you know, I've been in a position where I've been captured before, so blah blah blah, and loads of B Squadron, our own people, were ringing him up saying, "Hold on, Billy, you're bullshitting. You've never been captured." And he went, "Actually, speak to Mick, because we actually got captured in Bosnia." So even our own squadron didn't know about it, if that makes sense. Kept very, very low key,
Right.
because ultimately it wasn't a major drama. You know, it wasn't, for us, it wasn't a big issue. You know, yeah, okay, it was. You're getting sort of bit of interrogation, bit of rib tickling with an AK and stuff like that.
And I find that amusing, that how we can look at things with that attitude. Like, you got an AK-47, all right, the Muppet should have had it ready anyway, but he cocks it in your face, right? And then you're just laughing at him. Then you're going in and you get roughed up a little bit, bayonet prodding, and it's just like part of everyday life, and yet.
I think the laughing came out of, because you're obviously nervous, was obviously a bit of a nervous laughter, because you know you're going through, oh, I wonder what's going to happen here.
Of course, yeah.
And just doing that cocking it sort of relieved, gave us a bit of relief actually, and the relief came in a form of laughing, because automatically both of us at the same time went, cocking your weapon. You're on the front line. You should have a round in the chamber already. So his unprofessionalism by not having a round in the chamber was our source of relief and laughter.
So after that, you get back to Hereford. What's going on then? Because now, I suppose, what year was that?
Yeah, so that was 95.
Yeah.
94, 90. Yeah, 95.
Right, so you come into the, I suppose, sunset of your career now, and you got what?
Yeah, so coming back from that, so I was sent you a posting. So I ended up going to MI5, as it happens, as a military advisor.
MI5 in London, yeah.
Yeah, because I've got a surveillance background with the the 14 inch.
Yeah.
I was the ideal person to send down to London to work with MI5 in London, and we were just there as military advisors, I suppose, helping out, and you know, just showing them what we used to do in Northern Ireland, you know, how they can, because a lot of their targets were now Northern Ireland terrorists on the mainland. So we were working very much mainly with the Northern Ireland sort of desk, if that makes sense. And it was a great 2 years, a bit of an eye opener about how the government intelligence agencies operate and how they don't talk to each other. Because it's funny, because after an operation, we all had so you had MI5 in one corner, you had the special branch in another corner, the anti-terrorist team and nobody was talking. They were in their little cliques, and that was a big flaw at the time, that all these agencies were doing their own job, but they weren't actually getting it all together. So that was really the start of the integration between everybody. Start talking rather than just trying to do the job yourself.
And how's Kim coping now? Because you've got kids, haven't you?
Yeah, so we had the three boys pretty sharpish. So Connor, Callum, Kieran, 1 year between 18 months between each of them. So all sort of growing up together. We had a big Rottweiler. So we had the big Rottweiler first before we had any of the kids. And when I was over in Northern Ireland, I actually took the Rottweiler with me to give Kim a bit of freedom, so that she could just concentrate on that. So every time I came back, I obviously brought the dog back with me. So the kids, because the kids obviously miss the dog, especially my youngest boy, who ended up as a military dog handler, if that makes sense. So so all three boys are all in the military, doing their thing now, which is great to see. So it's interesting to see how their careers are progressing from a military guy.
So after that's great, thank you. So after your posting as a military advisor with the MI5 and helping Special Branch, MI5 and the anti-terrorist unit get the stuff together and communicate, where did you go then, and what was happening, and what were you thinking about?
Yeah, so I was then hitting my last final 2 years. So I got called in to see the adjutant back in Hereford, and they said, "Listen, you've got 2 years left. What do you want to do? We've got these postings that we need filling. Anything of interest?" And one of them was the close quarter battle cell down at Pontralis, which was just teaching people how to shoot weapons and stuff like that, and really good. So we went down and did that, and we managed to completely change, because the CQB cell at the time was stuck in the old way of doing things. Some of the attack scenarios were done from years ago. So the chief instructor, who's also an XP squadron lad, we sort of sat in with him and said, "Listen, we need to change." Because one of the big training things down there was the situational awareness training.
Yeah,
they do a basic package, and then they do an advanced package, and it's like being on the streets of Belfast. And if you get it wrong, you're going to get jumped on, and you're going to get a good kicking, because it was all before the health and safety got involved in it. If that makes sense. So we used to get a lot of injuries going through it. Some scary moments with the shooting, because you were having to train non-special forces people. It was for the 14 people, really. Up to a standard that they were the same as SES people shooting pistols. So the learning curve was massive, if that makes sense. And so some of the things we used to do on the ranges were quite dodgy, to say the least, quite dangerous. But they had to have that confidence, because once they finished our course, they were straight over into Belfast or into South, or doing it for real. So there was no pussyfooting about. They had to get it right first time. And unfortunately, with that, you get close calls. I've seen a girl shoot over the top of a paratrooper. And his hair literally parted with a 9mm round went between his hair. But it was his fault, because but we had it videoed, it was his fault because he should have made contact with her before it stood up and moved, because they were both on the same side of a street. So
Right.
you imagine, so one's got
Yeah.
to be down and one's over the top, and then, then you reverse it. And if you get that wrong, you're going to get hurt. Now we were millimeters away from having somebody shot in the head there.
Right.
But it was a good learning curve because we video all the scenarios because you need people to learn from it. When people saw it, flipping, oh, that was close. But lessons learned. Make sure you do what we tell you. You make sure you do. Don't get it wrong, because the consequences of getting this wrong is fatality. This is serious stuff now. You're teaching people to go on an operational tour. So the learning curve was massive, and that was a massive enjoyment. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and I was working with a lad called Kev Jones, who sadly passed away not that long ago.
Right.
But having him, we were a fantastic team, both very mature, very easygoing, pretty relaxed. Made the students sort of, because they were coming from when they were over at doing the surveillance, they were under a lot of pressure.
It's intense. Yeah.
And then doing close target recce, is quite intense. So when they come to us, we had a lot more relaxed atmosphere, but the consequences of getting something wrong was a fatality. Unlike surveillance, you get something wrong in surveillance, get something wrong in CTR, get something wrong on our end, you're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
So having that embedded in their head, was quite a large learning curve. So thoroughly enjoyed it, and it also gave me the opportunity. I managed to go up to Scotland for 3 months to do a security manager's diploma just prior to leaving.
And that's interesting, because I want to just check on there, because at this point you must be thinking about what's happening in Civvy Street now. You've had a distinguished career in the military, and by and large you know nothing else but the military at this stage, do you? So what's going on in your head? What's Kim thinking? What are your kids thinking? What's happening?
Well, it's funny because my initial thought was I wanted to join the UN, really because I hated the UN at the time, and I just thought it was all wrong. Yeah. And I thought I can make a difference here, by joining the UN. So I applied, and they actually sent me a contract. So bear in mind that I was now a staff sergeant in the SAS, or W2 in my shadow rank. Yeah. I sent my CV off, went to New York, and I got a phone call saying, "Oh, have you got a fax machine? We're going to fax you a contract through, blah blah blah." And the contract came through, and it's just reams of typical UN, reams and reams of paper, and you get to the one sheet that you read it, which is the money side of it. They basically wanted me to be a security guard at a post in East Timor, lifting up the barrier.
That's a real use of your skills, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking. So I rang New York up and said, "Oh yeah, thank you for the the contract. But can you tell me, have you actually got my CV in front of you?" They went, "No." They went, "No, I didn't think you had." So they were just filling out, security guard. Yeah. So I turned it down. I said, "Listen, that's not for me." So my next job really was working with a local ex-regiment guy who'd set his own company up in Hereford for a couple of months. And while I was working there, I got the opportunity to go to Kazakhstan,
right,
and for a week. And basically, 6 of us had applied for Western security manager over in Kazakhstan with a multinational company. And when I was over there, and I was the last one, and bearing in mind I'm competing against ex-officers people that had been out quite a few years, people that had actually worked in the gas and oil industry. So, had all these fancy, they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
And the plan was that each of us was going to go out there week at a time on your own and do a security assessment. And then you were going to hand that in. So I was like the last one to go out there. So did the security assessment, but before I did the security assessment, I actually sat down with the local Kazakhs that I was going to be working with, took them out for a meal, asked them what the concerns were, what they were worried about, and then sort of did my assessment in the last couple of days, and without a shadow of doubt, probably handed in the worst assessment. I didn't have any blueprints.
And by the way, I just want to pick up on that, right? So you've gone out, you've wined and dined the assessors effectively. You've got to write this report. How you think? Because I mean, when you were with the SAS, you were pretty much hands-on all the time. And whilst I suppose there might have been a little bit of paperwork, it's not about the paperwork so much, is it? It's about doing. So you're sat down now having to write this report. You're up against people who have had better training than you, have been in the game, they know how to write reports. How are you feeling when you sat down with a blank piece of paper and a pen or a typewriter or a keyboard?
I was ringing people up saying, "Can you help me?" Because I didn't have a clue. Security assessment. The security assessments we've done were on the back of a cigarette packet.
Yeah.
But the thing that's the SS have always been very good at hearts and minds. Speaking to people, and anyway, about 3 weeks later, I got a phone call. I was on holiday with Kim in Greece, without the kids. We dropped them off with Kim's mum. And I got a phone call while we were out in Greece, and it was this guy saying, "Mick, you've got the job." And I went, "Oh right, okay." And he went, "Yeah, your report was pretty much pants." But as it transpired, all the other people didn't speak to the local people.
No.
So they'd gone out there with one thing in mind: write a fantastic report, nothing else.
Yeah.
So when it came to choosing an individual, the HSE director at the time, an American guy, had gone into the security department and said, "Listen, you've now seen all 6 candidates. Who do you want to work with?" And they went, "Mick," because he was the only one that actually spoke to us and asked us what our issues were and stuff like that.
And that's a great, because one of the things that I always like to cover is how important skills are that you gain in the military to help you transition. And I think you've hit it on the head there, haven't you? Because and some of the guys you were up against were ex-military as well. But the fact is that you really honed in on what matters, and that's communication, dedication, discipline, reliability, teamwork, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and initially they wanted a back-to-back position, so 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off.
Yeah.
But apparently I didn't press that much that they said, "Listen, Mick's going to be doing 6 weeks on, 2 weeks off." So automatically I asked for a pay rise, because the initial pay it was £40,000 for 4 on, 4 off, and I said, "Actually, can I have 60,000? Because I'm now doing 6 weeks." And it's funny because I had Kim next to me on a beach. They put the phone down and I said, "Listen, Kim, they're going to ring me back any minute now and say, yeah, okay." Phone call, yeah, Mick, that's fine, 60 that. Oh, great. Now, as it transpired, the first year that I was over there, I actually got another 10,000 pay rise, because bizarrely, the second week I was actually in the job, the president of Kazakhstan was coming over to visit, and they said, "Mick, I know you're new here, but can you sort out a presidential visit?" Well, not that long beforehand, I'd actually worked in Kazakhstan looking after the Aga Khan in Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan. So we'd met all the prime minister, the presidents, if that makes sense, at a high level.
Yeah.
So having that, you know, and now I was working with the KMB or the old KGB, Kazakhs. So try to make it as simple as possible. And made their life really, really easy because we did all the work, basically. And at the end of it, I got another month's pay rise. They called us in and went, for someone who's only been here 2 weeks to organise a presidential visit to that level and for it to go really, really well, you know, they gave me a month's extra pay, if that makes sense. So,
Oh, well
so
done.
me and Kim were looking at each other thinking, oh, this is flipping great. you know, getting all this money all of a sudden. So it was the gas and oil industry that I then dedicated myself to. So Kazakhstan was we were there for 4.5 years because it was a construction phase.
Yeah.
A lot of expats, which is why I was there. It then once it had finished, it was then closing down. I then got offered a job over in Equatorial Guinea, and the reason that was quite infamous was Simon Mann was doing his attempted coup of.
Right. Yeah.
So I was there at the time. I actually had a chat with Simon at a barbecue in Hereford, saying, "Why the hell didn't you let us know what you were doing so we could have helped or whatever?" But he, quite rightly, he said, "Listen, mate, we didn't want anybody else to be involved in it." So, but as it happened, while I was out there, so the Equatorial Guinean authorities knew my background, obviously because of Simon ex-SAS.
Yeah.
So I had, so we had 2 incidents over there. One incident was the president did a meeting, we did a presidential visit in Equatorial Guinea. Everything went perfect. A couple of weeks later, his son, who's a bit of a flyboy, playboy as such, he stepped over the mark and demanded to start using our facilities, drinking alcohol down at our area. And I said, no, you're not. So went down and confronted not only him, but his bodyguard team as well. And they got upset about it because this guy was saying, listen, you've just done, your dad's just been here, following all the rules, you do the same. So that didn't go down too well. So they sort of left and then about a week later, we had a big JCB stolen from the site. Now, I tracked it down, found it in town, painted, because Malabo in Equatorial Guinea is not the biggest town. So I managed to track it down, find it, and then got 2 American truckers to bring a big truck down there. We hooked up the JCB on the back of the truck and took it back to our base. A couple of days later, a senior policeman turned up demanding for the JCB to go back because it's under investigation. I said, well, no need because we've now got it back. And a more senior policeman came a couple of days later, and then the chief of police ended up coming and accused me of upsetting their system. And what it was, as it happened, it was a senior policeman had arranged for the JCB to be stolen, and because we recovered it before they could sell it, they were out of pocket. It was corruption, West Africa here, total corruption. So one day I went into work and the immigration people turned up at the work and escorted me to the airport. I was kicked out of country.
Say bye-bye, you naughty boy.
Yeah, absolutely. They obviously thought, I was not a person to be working with, if that makes sense. So so literally got thrown out of country. And what are they? So from there I went over and did a year in Iraq and Afghanistan. And one of the last jobs, I actually got asked to teach a load of Iraqis at Shaber, based in Basra,
Yeah.
running a bodyguard course, a 3-week bodyguard course for local Iraqis. And the plan was that these local Iraqis were going to take over from expats. And obviously, the security company that I was working for saw a niche in the market.
Mm.
They could swamp the market with these, SAS trained people.
Yeah.
So I turned up. There was me and an Australian SAS guy. I was running the course. It was based on a normal SAS bodyguard course, but condensed into 3 weeks. Now, trying to condense an SAS bodyguard course into 3 weeks was quite challenging.
Mm.
And anyway, so 20 students, first minute, day one, lost a student. So we went out for a little jog. He dropped off the back, said, listen, some of the stuff that we're going to be doing, you need a bit level more fitness than what you've just shown. So bye-bye, away you go. So I then get a phone call from Dubai saying, Mick, all 18 people now have to pass that course, which instantly red flags were into my head. So we went through the course. The local Iraqis accused me of being worse than Saddam Hussein, just to make them do lots of press ups. And the reason for it is to build their chest up.
Yeah.
Any misdemeanor press ups, they didn't like that, but they did it. And at the very end of the course, one person passed. We failed the other 17, instantly failed. And the only one that passed was only on the proviso that he could be a driver, nothing else.
Right.
Because unfortunately, I didn't want these people now swamping the market, because if they're going to take over expats, they have to be as good as the expats. These people weren't. They weren't able to adapt. They couldn't take in the information. So I wasn't happy to put my name to an individual.
Your stamp of approval. Yeah.
Yeah. So we failed it. Now the security company were pretty upset because they'd already had another 10 courses lined up, because they were going to swamp the market with these, SAS trained locals. So it fell flat on first course. Everybody failed, less one. So they cancelled all the courses and went for that. But I'm happy. Obviously, it costs the security company quite a lot of money, but I'm happy in my decision, because ultimately they wouldn't have said as trained by this company. They would have said as trained by Mick Hawkes XSAS.
Yeah.
And I wasn't happy with that. Same as I was chatting with the Australian guy, and he said, Mick, absolutely, fail them. They're not up to standard. They're not up to standard, because ultimately you're putting other people's lives at risk. So some person may say, listen, I need someone to look after me. Oh yeah, we've got these people trained by the SAS, and they get that individual killed, because at the time Iraq was a very dangerous location. I wasn't happy to be doing that. So we failed them. So we finished that. I then did a job in the Western Desert, which is quite a dangerous job. And they were building border forts, and even the Americans refused to do the security around it. So we ended up doing it for 3 months. And at the end of that, I had a phone call with a sat phone interview for a job in Saudi Arabia straight after we finished the Iraq job. So that then got me back in. So I took a year out of gas and oil because of what happened in Equatorial Guinea. Did Iraq and Afghanistan. Obviously went over to Afghanistan to do some training and bank assessments, doing assessments of banks all over Afghanistan, which was great. But then got straight back into gas and oil, working in Saudi Arabia. And then from Saudi Arabia, I then got a call from an individual who knew me from way back, a safety guy, saying, "Mate, there's a company called SBM Offshore that are looking for a safety stroke security guy for West Africa. Would you be interested?" And because I'd done a diploma in safety while I was in Kazakhstan, just to understand how safety people operate, I ended up taking this job. And after 1 year of being in the job in Nigeria, I was asked to take over the security of the whole company, if that makes sense. So I ended up doing security. So spent the rest of my time, 6 years in Nigeria, because that's where all the work was being done. We then closed Nigeria. I then moved back to Monaco for 3 years. Sat in Monaco, sort of traveling all around the world, because it was a worldwide thing. I then ended up my last 5 years, I suppose, in The Hague, working out of the Amsterdam office. Amsterdam office being at Schiphol at the airport.
Yeah.
So I did that, and literally May 2022 had a light bulb effect, thinking, what am I now going to do? Because I've now just done 22 years in corporate security. What have I got to show for it at the end? And I just thought, I'm going to write a book, which we've done, which is going through the pre-publisher phase at the moment, called Life on the Edge. And the book's all about sort of helping people when they hit a brick wall, how to because of what we've gone through.
Yeah.
In our career, working with a fantastic Nicole, a name. She's a left winger feminist from Australia. Used to work for Gordon Brown. Absolutely fantastic individual. She's done all the work for the book, but unfortunately, she is very, very ill at this present time. Yeah, she's sick. So I managed to have a chat with her before she got too sick, to say, listen, I'm not going to move the book any further on. You've done all the work. So when you're back up and running, really out of loyalty, she has done all the work. Yeah. So the book's on hold until she's feeling better. If that makes sense.
Right. Go on.
Yeah, at the same time as doing the book, I then decided to bring Hawkes and Co. So Hawkes, second name, and Co, my daughter, and hopefully the three boys, when they finish their military career, they can become part of this little family organisation. Because I've worked with security companies for years and years and years, seen the good bits, seen the bad bits, and I just want to put the Hawkes and Co thing is all about having that personal touch. With
so how is your relationship, the family relationship, being affected? Because you've spent a lot of time all around the world. You've been at the sharp end, and I know that Nigeria is certainly an interesting place at times. And many of the other places that you've been to as well are interesting. So what has that had effect on your psyche, on your relationships, and how you do things?
Yeah, unfortunately, my marriage broke down purely because I was away all the time.
Yeah.
So we got amicably separated at the moment. Have been for the last 7 years. And it was because we were just drifting apart. I was coming in, and then Kim and my daughter Keely were going off on holiday, and I was a doggy sitter because we've got 4 dogs. Yeah. So literally over a glass of wine, we mutually split up. I gave my wife Kim, gave her the house. We had a big 5-bed barn conversion. Yeah. That's yours, and the reason being is she deserved it. She's been the bedrock of a family. When I've been away gallivanting in the military, doing stuff that I wanted to do and this, that, and the other. And when I was out, working over in Kazakhstan, she has always been there for the kids.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And so for me, it was a no-brainer. Kim, the house is yours. You do what you want with it, because she deserved it, without a shadow, and so it was all very amicable. So this year, Christmas Day this year, sorry, last year, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah.
At Christmas, so we were all sat around at Kim's, me, my daughter, two of my boys, because one was away.
Yeah.
All having a Christmas dinner. So it's nice. But in effect, that working away cost me my marriage. And the thing with the working with SBM offshore for 15 years, the dedication that I put into SBM had that knock-on effect that it cost me my marriage.
Yeah.
Now, the 15 years I worked with SBM, just before I joined SBM, they'd lost. They'd had 3 people kidnapped off a vessel. One subsequently got killed. One lost his arm, and the other one thankfully survived it. But the company were in a bad state, and we went to the directors and said, "Listen, you need to change. You need to bring in a security culture within your organisation, because you're working in dangerous places. You're in Angola, you're in Equatorial Guinea, you're in Nigeria. That's just West Africa. You're in Brazil. There's a lot of Brazil that are quite dangerous, especially Rio, places like that. So you need to." Anyway, the directors, so we brought in this new security culture, and proof's in the pudding, because we never had a single security incident in high risk areas for the next 15 years. And that's all down to not only the staff for taking it, buying into it, but also the directors for allowing you to culture
to reshape it and develop it.
Yeah, absolutely. But so while I was head of security, I was on call 24/7, 365 days of the year, because if you're head of security, then you have a responsibility to deal with things because criminals, bad people, terrorists, and that lot, they don't take time off. Christmas is not. So every hour of every day I was off, you were dealing with emails and stuff like that. Right, got that out of the way, push that out of there, and then every now and then you'd get a phone call. Now that took its toll, believe you me. Hindsight, I wish I hadn't done that amount of dedication for a company, even though it probably saved a lot of lives and a lot of hassle. But it cost me a lot, because it cost me my marriage.
Well, let's hope that every cloud has a silver lining, and you've still got a great relationship with Kim. And I know that you live quite local to each other, which is great. And I mean, you're good friends. So that is the silver lining, I suppose. So thank you very much. The Colombo question, well, there's two things actually. What does the future hold for you now? What are you looking to do?
Yeah, so Hawkes & Co. And initially we started Hawkes & Co. as a father-daughter teaching. So I've taught all around the world, personal safety, situation awareness, breakaway, and restraint sort of type training. So we do schools, and the reason I brought my daughter in is when we're teaching schools specifically, but also females, adults, they relate to Keeley more than they relate to me. So it's a good little dynamic. It's quite unique, if that makes sense. But I live in rural Herefordshire, and I live right next to a farm. Now, when we were in Northern Ireland, I used to break into farms covertly, and literally sit 10 metres away from these farmers going about there. So we know all about how to get into farms and stuff like that. And it was the old classic poacher term gamekeeper moment. We can help these people. So at the moment, we're really pushing the rural security side of things. Purely because, again, we've got a slightly different way of doing it. We offer cost-effective solutions. So we don't go into a farm and say, this is what you need. we actually go in there and say, listen, what have you got? Right, let's use what you have now, and actually putting an arm around the farmers, because farmers have got no security culture. You can go onto any farm in the land and drive away with a vehicle the keys will be left in the ignition.
Yeah.
Because there's no security culture there. So we offer lots of training. We're going to be going over to Cambridge here end of the month. Do 3 lots of personal safety and restraint training to some of their staff. On the 22nd of this month, we're teaching Herefordshire Farm secretaries personal safety. And actually, this coming Monday, we're up at the SAS camp teaching the kids of the regiment lads, teaching their kids.
Oh, well done.
Yeah, personal safety and stuff like that. So having Keely with me doing that is a big help. So after all the stuff that we've been through, really, it's all about, for me, it's all about helping people. You know, how can I help you? Using my experience now, how can I help you? Which a lot of security companies tend to forget. I've seen a lot of security companies, and first question for the security company is, how much can we make? Job, whereas actually that's the wrong start. It should be, how can I help you? And the financial side of it is, we'll come to that after. How can we help you?
Yeah, and certainly when your book comes out, I'll be first on the list to buy it, because I know how much goes into writing a book. Because I've created the Pathfinder, which is three journals, which are workbooks, and that takes years to put together. Actually, all the process. So I do understand where you're coming from with that. So the Columbo question for you, Mick, because what you've shared is brilliant. The ups and downs, the challenges, being held at gunpoint, being interrogated, changing processes for security methods. What's the one top tip you would give to someone who's getting out of the military and not sure what to do and how transferable the skills are, or a veteran who's out of the military, maybe hit on bad times, or maybe a veteran who's doing really well but just wants to get better? What's the one tip that you give?
Yeah, think outside the box. So a lot of security people, when they come out, they automatically think security. When actually your background will take care of the security. Go and get yourself a slightly different, i.e. safety. Go and get qualified in safety. And the reason I say that is anything to do with security, your background will deal with it. But on the safety side of it, you're also adding to your repertoire. And I've seen it, I've worked in the industry far too long now, a HSSE manager. So a bit about safety will always be that step up above a person who's just security or who's just safety, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So my top tip really would be, just don't think about security all the time, because your background will take care of that. Think about how I can actually add to my resume. And the reason being is that there are lots of resumes and lots of people trying to chase jobs. You need to be that one individual that stands out, have something different.
Mick Hawkes QCB, thank you very much for spending your time with me and sharing your life, and I wish you the very best for the future.
Yeah, thanks, mate, and much appreciated. Enjoy the rugby, and everyone else, stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy your life.
Thank you, and have a brilliant day.
JoeTeams.com is a resource I have created to fulfill my mission to help 1 million veterans and business entrepreneurs like you achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations they deserve. JoeTeams.com is jam-packed full of valuable resources specifically designed to help you on your journey to success. Visit JoeTeams.com now to find out how you can join and start your journey to success immediately. That's JoeTeams.com, JoeTeams, JoeTeams.com. And until we meet again, have a brilliant day.